Hey, listen to Wrestling Roundup on FreeFM, ArrowFM, and MPR. As always, I'm Grady, and live on Skype we got Josh.
Hey.
Raw, SmackDown, NXT, the last set of shows before we talk about our Rumble predictions next week on the show. But on the lead up, we are getting some pretty good segments. One of which, I guess, at the moment, kind of a storyline is Sami Zayn and Johnny Knoxville.
Yeah, it's sort of similar to a certain storyline from last year that you hated, so why not? Sami seems to be the kind of guy that they bring in the celebrities for if they're just wanting to put the celebrity over and they don't need to do anything major with them. Like, say, Bad Bunny last year. Bad Bunny went with Miz because they needed to do something really major with. And Sammy ended up with the person that bought a fake Pokemon box.
Yeah.
For $3.5 million.
He does get put into those, like, celebrity segment roles, I guess, where, yeah, he can just make an utter fool of himself. Like, as you said with The Miz and Bad Bunny, they wanted to do a full-on match. The Miz didn't really look like a fool leading up to it. You sort of saw them as two serious competitors. Whereas, when you look at Sami Zayn and Johnny Knoxville, that's just pure sports entertainment segments there. You know, Sami Zayn's trying to run himself down in a shopping trolley and jump the ring. It is what it is, and I'm sure in the Rumble it'll be a nice little interesting piece as the two of them come out.
Yeah, and that we could get potentially a match at WrestleMania. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I mean, Sammy is what he is. He's he's a mid-card guy. He's not going to ever be top tier. That's unfortunate, but you need somebody in those type of roles. And Sammy's good at it. And I know a lot of people hate celebrity tie-ins and stuff, but it's not a bad spot to be put up to have the company say, we depend on you to put on something good with this celebrity. For years, that was Big Show. And Big Show usually delivered. Usually. There are exceptions to the rule. Akabano comes to mind.
Yeah.
But usually, and then last year we had the amazing match with Bad Bunny and The Miz, as we've been talking about. And so I wouldn't be opposed to it. But it is just fun to see Sami Zayn doing these wacky things that aren't part of the conspiracy that we've seen for 2 years.
Yeah, and I think another important piece to mention, and it could have just been, you know, a passing little piece, but the segment did actually end with Shinsuke Nakamura and Rick Boogs coming out and launching Sammy, but potentially could lead to a Sami Zayn Shinsuke Nakamura rematch now on the main roster, Intercontinental Championship on the line maybe. Maybe you could just put Johnny Knoxville in the corner of Shinsuke and have the tie-in be that way.
Yeah, that's always possible.
Look, anything with Shinsuke would be an improvement on nothing.
I mean, it's been almost a year since the last time it was defended on pay-per-view.
Yep.
Well, they're not even pay-per-views anymore. They're just live specials.
Yeah, special live event or something fancy.
But yeah, it is what it is. I hate to say this, but I think I've always been one that was kind of vocal against Shinsuke. I like his talent, but unfortunately he suffers from a translation issue. He can't translate to the common audience, largely because people can't understand him. And that's unfortunately due to his accent. I said I liked his talent, but I always said I think that was going to be the one thing that would hold him back. Unless they got him a manager. And when they turned him heel against AJ, they should have gotten him a manager. Could you imagine the wonders he could have done with, say, MVP?
Yeah. Sometimes all you need for someone like that is that mouthpiece. And Rick Boogs is kind of weird as a manager because he isn't really a mouthpiece. He's kind of like a guitar piece. But it's kind of, like the two of them do have charisma in spades, whether they are able to show it off. Like we always knew Boogs when he was back in NXT and everything. He was a standout because he was this big personality and everything. And Shinsuke, when he's decided to show it, also has personality and charisma in spades, but as you say, there's a little bit of a presentation problem with getting it out. And so if you could do that, these two should be to the moon levels of charisma. There's just that little barrier or that little something that's not happening.
Yeah, or even making them Heyman guys. If we weren't doing putting him with Reigns and then back with Lesnar, if we had put him with Shinsuke and Boogs, that would have worked because Heyman would have made it work. So yeah, it's just I think that is the lost art of being a manager has really hurt a lot of potential top stars. Because there have been a lot of stars that could have used a mouthpiece that didn't have one because there aren't that many in the business anymore. And again, I think that would have been great if they had Corey Graves do that when he retired as a wrestler. He's been a great commentator, but I think he would have been a perfect modern manager. They could still do that with him being cleared now that he can take bumps. But it's just, I'd like to see more managers. And that leads me back to NXT with our old buddy, Robert Stone.
Yeah, there's a few different ones in NXT.
Yeah. He's been entertaining with what he's done, which has shocked me because I remember saying like 6 years ago when he was on the reality television show on CBS, I think Amazing Race it was, that I could not believe he was representing professional wrestling. And that's a long way to come from Robbie E to me saying I like what the guy is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Is Robert Stone. So, but he's a comedy manager. He's not to be taken seriously, which again is a lot of a problem with the managers, is that there's not people there that are to be taken seriously the way they need to be.
Yeah, I think back on, like, to look to NXT again, just the sort of most recent, and I'm sure it is not recent when I think about it, but Paul Ellering with the Authors of Pain was somebody to be taken seriously. And I think did well in his role.
Yeah, but that was mostly because of the fact that he was a Hall of Famer.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you had thrown anybody else into that role, it wouldn't have worked because they wouldn't have believed him. Like, for example, Drake Maverick, when they put him with them. That didn't work.
No.
By a long shot, that didn't work. But, yeah, it's just, I think back of the 80s and 90s, and I remember, like, Captain Lou Albano. And then you had Freddie Blassie. You had Jimmy Hart. You had, obviously, what people consider the greatest of all time, Bobby the Brain Heenan. You had Paul Bear, who was, before that, was known as Percy Pringle, and did great things in the South as that. And then, of course, was Paul Bear, and then you just have Brother Love, and you have all these great managers that could carry segments for people who necessarily weren't that great or established as characters yet. And we need a renaissance of that. We need some more managers that can do that. It's just such a dying role that's so sad. Yeah,
nowadays the only real manager you have is Paul Heyman, and it's a game of who gets Paul Heyman, right? Brock Lesnar leaves for a little while, we buff him at Reigns, and then Brock Lesnar comes back, he's gone again.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about managers and you're talking about Robbie E., someone who was formerly in the Robert Stone brand, Aliyah coming up to the main roster and gives Natalya another Guinness World Record.
Oh, boy.
I had a feeling that would be your reaction to this one. I had to bring it up.
It is. It's just fun to see. It is a new talent. We have to get her over. Natalya's the least. That's going to be the one person that isn't going to be hurt by anything, really. So, sure, put her over in a 3-second match. Obviously, I want to see more. I want to see them actually do something with Aliyah, because it's a new body. Something we desperately need in the women's division. And Natalya, and he gives Natalya something to do other than tweet pictures of her cat.
Yeah, if you're talking about, desperately needing bodies in the women's division, you can see that because it appears as though we're heading for, maybe at WrestleMania, maybe down the line, Lita coming back for a SmackDown Women's Championship match. If we're reaching the bring in a legend for a marquee title match, it'll be interesting. The division's pretty empty.
Yeah. It's sort of similar to when Charlotte faced Trish Stratus a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be fine with it. I don't want to see Lita as champion, because I think that would just belittle the championship. And at that point, you might as well retire it and just have one champion. But yeah, I'd be down for just seeing what Flair can bring out of Lita after all these years.
Mm. Flair's basically just collecting
really
legends.
Yeah. Out of what was considered the first Revolution, you had Trish and then you had Lita. And there were a few other bodies, of course. My girl, Molly. But they were the two big names. So, yeah, it makes sense if you have the greatest of the current era going over the greatest of the first era. Yeah, it makes sense.
And we are about halfway through our show this week, and that means it is time to go into our entrance theme, and it is going to be none other than the Irishman Sheamus, and that song is playing for you right about now. And you're back with Wrestling Roundup on FreeFM, ArrowFM, and NPR. I'm Grady, he's Josh. We still got Raw, we still got some NXT, we still got a lot to get through here. But one thing I definitely want to make sure we have time to touch on, Damien Priest, who was pretty much undefeated in one-on-one competition, has taken a loss up against Kevin Owens.
Yeah. Of all people in on Raw, it definitely makes sense for Kevin Owens to be now, because Owens has been wrestling for the WWE Championship, which is considered a greater championship than Priest's United States Championship.
Mm-hmm.
Owens also doing it the dirty way that he did it also makes sense. So it kind of protects Priest with his first loss. At the same time, it also gives us a reason to have another match. Potentially for the title, where we could potentially have Priest lose it. Owens becomes United States Champion, I think, for the third time? Third or fourth. And we get Owens, with our heel Owens with the United States Championship, and then we can have Priest move on to maybe elevating him to, I don't know, a Money in the Bank win?
Maybe. Keep pitching that. Yeah. You'll get there.
Hey, I have a pretty good track record with it.
Yeah, I can't deny the stats. If we jump over to NXT, Just a couple of things to mention. The Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic is kicking off. And we got our first few matches. The Creed brothers overcoming Josh Briggs and Brooks Jensen in one match, while Malik Blade and Idris Enofe overcome Legado del Fantasma in the other. And moving on into the semifinals.
Yeah, I'm not honestly that surprised. I think this year they want to build more of these more newer teams with this one. So I actually expect the finals to be Jacket Time versus Creed Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
That's my finals. I know you and Brandon had picked yours. I never actually put mine out. I just said I think Jacket Time's winning.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that's the case. But I would not be surprised with the Creed Brothers winning. I just don't see MSK or the Grizzled Young Vets in the finals again.
No.
Because that's what they did last year. And I don't see that happening again.
Yeah, in my picks I did have Creeds.
Yeah. So I like that they moved the Creed Brothers along. And they basically eliminated the Legado de Fantasma. But yeah, I think this year it's going to be to establish a new star of a team.
Mm-hmm.
That's either going to be Jacket Time or the Creed Brothers, in my opinion. We'll see where we are in a couple weeks when we get towards the finals, but I think that will be our finals.
Mm-hmm. And the Legado del Fantasma match also set up, I guess, Santos Escobar and Bron Breakker having a little bit of a feud there. Bron intimidating them heading into it and keeping Escobar out when he tried to interfere in the match. So potentially something there for our NXT champion. And then in our NXT main event, Roderick Strong unfortunately fell, as we kind of expected him to the might of, and I'm only going to continue calling him Walter, to the might of Walter.
I have no problem calling him Gunther, because I like the name.
As long as it remains just Gunther.
Yes. I imagine the chants, Gunther, Gunther, Gunther.
As long as we're not naming our wrestlers after World War II Nazi commanders with a last name, then we're fine.
To be fair, Walter was also a name of several of the Nazi commanders.
With a first name only, we're good. The copyright was for a full name.
Yeah, he also apparently had a former gimmick name of Big Daddy Walter. So
that just sounds hilarious.
Is it really that bad? Yeah. Is it really that bad though? When you compare it to that, I don't mind it. It is what it is. Clearly he's going to be a villain, and the people put too much stock in a name anyway. This is so they can can control his rights, and there are worse names. Just ask T-Bar.
Yeah, I guess for most, like, we all saw it coming after, like, the trademark notice went in. We were really hoping it wasn't going to be the full name. But for somebody who you've already, had compete on NXT, he was the longest reigning NXT UK champion for a year and a half. He's been on the main roster for Survivor Series and a couple other matches. He's the leader of a faction that's referenced constantly throughout NXT. And then to just be like, yeah, he's called Gunther now.
Yeah, but the thing is, it also Gunther also means king in German. So it's actually a kind of a smart name too.
We'll have to wait and see. At the moment, not a huge fan. Didn't see a huge reasoning around it. But we'll see. Is there anything else you want to get off? We got about maybe 5 minutes left in the show. Is there anything else that you want to make mention of? SmackDown, Raw, or NXT, or off-brand?
Let's
providing the world, you can have any topic you'd like.
Let's see here.
Except for that one.
Austin Theory of Finn Balor.
Again, Austin Theory just going over. They really see something in this guy.
Yeah. I like this. Yeah, the internet is going nuts because he lost to Austin Theory, a new guy they're trying to establish that has 20 years potentially in the business ahead of him, against somebody who's pushing 40. People don't want to hear that, but Finn isn't young. Is a sin. They've decided to stop pushing Finn Balor because they put him under Austin Theory.
This really is the Drew McIntyre Chosen One storyline again, right? Like, Mr. McMahon is personally giving instructions to Austin Theory, threatening him if he's going to lose. Austin Theory basically is the Chosen One. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I would love to see this eventually build to a match with Drew, if Drew can get healthy enough for it. Because I think that would be a great payoff. Have Austin do all these wins and stuff. Maybe even give him like a run with the United States title. And then have him run up against, eventually, Drew, and have them have a feud. I think that would be an amazing payoff for it, and it would further elevate Austin Theory. Because he would be working with a guy who's considered 3 in the company.
Yeah.
Because you have Roman at 1, 2 kind of fluctuates at times. It's sometimes Seth, it's sometimes Drew. It's sometimes, in part-time, it's Brock Lesnar.
He's for sure in that upper echelon, that S tier.
Yeah. And so that would only further... so Austin Theory, I think he's developed himself a nice character. He's working well off of Vince, who can still cut promos and stuff, even at his over 80 age. And so I want to see where they go with Austin Theory. Because I think this kid has the it factor to be something major, not in the next couple years, but 4, 5 years from now. He could be main eventing WrestleMania for the company. And I would not have a problem with it because I think he has it in him.
Yeah. We'll have to see what Austin Theory's future is, as you say, in 5-6 years down the line, where he ends up being. We have tried and failed with him before. That doesn't mean that we should stop trying. He's got something in him. Got a little bit of a spark. And then we've got maybe 1 minute left in the show. I'm going to quickly throw in this 8-man tag team match just because I found the post-match stuff funny. Street Profits and the Mysterios ended up beating the Dirty Dogs and then Cruz and Aziz. But after the match, Ray and Dominic turned on the Street Profits and threw them over the top rope. And then immediately after that, Rey Mysterio turned on his son and threw him over the top rope. And sort of taught him a vital Royal Rumble lesson that it's every man for himself.
Yeah. Yeah, it is what it is, but that was a good little match. And of course, obviously all it was just, hey, the Rumble's in 2 weeks, let's not forget it. And it can possibly, with Mysterio being the cover boy for the new game, more ammunition for a potential heel turn for Dominic.
Personally, I would be very happy if this little post-match segment ended up in Dominic eliminating Ray in the actual Rumble. I feel like that would be a nice little symmetry to it. And that would, I guess, bring them towards their eventual clash that we're going to see down the line with the two Mysterios facing off.
I think if it's going to happen, it has to happen sooner than later. And I think it would have to happen at WrestleMania. So I think the explosion has to happen around Royal Rumble. maybe he does eliminate him, like you suggested, and then the next night on Raw, he gets questioned about it, and of course he says it, well, it's the Royal Rumble, every man for themselves. Even Dad has to understand that. And then they have a match, and Dominic short arms him, and they lose the match, and then he just takes out his frustrations on Ray, and that leads to a WrestleMania match.
Bada bing, bada boom, easy done. But that is all we've got time for this week. It's been great talking to you.
Bye, B.
You can visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/wrestling R&D up, or our Twitter page, twitter.com/wrestling RND up, or our YouTube page, youtube.com/wrestling RND up. And we will catch you next week with our preview for the Royal Rumble.